mean, you could even go as far as like
This
putting
is a,
something crazy like a unicorn sticker on your camera and a unicorn sticker on the corresponding end of the cable. I
That
mean,
sounds fun.
as long as either end
I love it.
what it corresponds
Sticker
to.
packets. Let's
Yeah.
go. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the In the Trenches Roundtable. Today we're doing an install focused episode. We have our awesome panel of experts with us again today.
Hello.
Hi.
Awesome. Heck yeah. Thanks for joining. Today we're going to be talking about a really fun one. So everyone strap on your socks, hold on tight. We're going to be talking about labeling cables. Can't laugh, Micah, during the intro. Come on.
I'm
I'm just
sorry.
teasing.
Strap on your socks. Is that what we do?
Come
Okay.
on. You
Strap
strap
on
them
your
on, right?
socks.
Velcro socks? Nobody's ever heard of them? Come on. We're going to
What kind of
be,
socks are you wearing, Ben?
well, I don't know, easy ones, I guess. This one we're going to be talking about labeling cables. And as boring or unfun as it might sound, we can't express how important it actually is to do when you're actually implementing and installing a system. And we're going to rely on our experts to walk us through why that is. So can we start by first telling us why do you label cables in the first place? And I guess really, what does that even mean? Labeling cables.
I mean, labeling cables is basically like marking each cable so you know what device it goes to and what location that device is in. So, each cable, you have a device on one end, and then you have, wherever it's whatever piece of networking equipment it's terminated at the other end, and either an MDF or an IDF, whether it be, a room or a cabinet enclosure, whatever. You need to know at that enclosure or cabinet or MDF room, what all these cables go to and what devices they're connected to. So if you label them and then you have some sort of, key about what, where all these devices are located, it just makes it easier for troubleshooting. You can kind of look and see what cable you're working with, go out to the device location, and start your troubleshooting process.
I was just talking about like what a key usually looks like. For our teams, we typically do that in the form of some sort of floor plan or a site map that takes an outline or a Google image of the location and marks cameras and marks what notation system we're going to use to identify each of those devices so that you've got that to kind of anchor what you're trying to do.
Yeah. I mean, when we're talking in terms of like, our experience with security cameras, yeah, that's definitely going to be the best way to utilize some kind of site map. But when we start talking about like, low voltage data installs and you start dealing with, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cables at different, keystone jack locations or device locations, computer locations, printer locations, it gets really hectic to try to remember where they're all coming from. So any kind of like, visual image of the site paired with some kind of, Excel sheet with, what label corresponds to which location on the patch panel and then corresponds to which, location or port on the network switch, really, really help you out in the long run.
I think like
And
you just
Cal, that's where sometimes different groups will use different color cable, right? To like even make that even easier to identify if you've got multiple types of devices.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've done large data jobs for people that's specify which color cable to use based on the device. So say you have a huge office building and you have hundreds of printers of that office building that are all connected to the network. Well, each printer needs to use a specific color cable, so you can then identify at the head end MDF or IDF which cable you're troubleshooting or which specific printer. Especially when you start getting with multiple floors, that's when it gets really, really complicated.
I think you also mentioned it like a key term there, which was like in the long run. So I think like one of the when you have a camera system and you just installed it, you might have a very strong idea what switch that those cameras are connected to, or where what cable is on that switch, where it goes to potentially, and everything like that. But then over time, some of that knowledge is just lost. You don't use it. So a year or two later, you have a camera down and it's connected to some PoE switch, and you've got to figure out where that PoE switch actually is. And that's where labeling it becomes so important. I think is not just the initial couple months after the install, but really you want this to be something that's easy to troubleshoot for years to come.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in a perfect world, right? You'd have whoever's managing your network stay at that company for forever, right? But
Yeah.
there's turnover. Different people are going to be managing, different aspects of the network or the camera system or the printers or whatever it may be. So any information that you can log and then pass on is gonna help your entity in the long run.
And even with like on the fly changes, like people sometimes have to go and do something really quickly and move things around on the switch or something like that. So, if you're not labeling those camera cables, it's some of that knowledge is going to be lost just even if it's the same person. So
Exactly. I was just going to say that, like, James, from your experience with support, how often was that the case that somebody just unplugged the wrong cable off of the
yes,
switch or something, you know?
yeah, exactly. So this isn't just like a do it yourself. This isn't just like a professional install. Only professionals should go and label their cables. If you're a do it yourself, customer and you're installing this camera system yourself, it's almost just as important, if not more important, to label your cables because especially if you got a wide, large camera network, um, 20, 30 cameras and you've got multiple PoE switches, sometimes it's very difficult for people. They'll have one PoE switch go down and then they're trying to track to see where that PoE switch get connected to, or where is that camera actually connected, what PoE switch is it on, where sometimes even that PoE switch is another topic sometimes. But yeah, I mean
Mhm.
it definitely happens where we're sitting there and we're having to do a napkin mat drawing of like kind of setting up the network and everything where everything's connected. And if they had just labeled that or kind of kept some order for it, it would definitely be a lot easier.
So, labeling cables seems more of like a mission critical task than it is really optional, right? Because what's the
Mhm.
alternative? Like, Kyle, during an install, the alternative sounds like an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, during an install, absolutely, it's going to add time to your install if each technician is going to have to go back and like tone and trace which
Mm.
cable connects to which camera. It's going to make the initial install last longer, and then in terms of service calls or troubleshooting, it's going to make that process way more time consuming. And most companies bill their service calls hourly, so the longer that it takes them to find out which camera and which cable and where it's terminated, the more you're going to be billed for.
So that's a really great point that I would love to stick on for a minute. What happens if you're in a situation where, maybe you are a new IT director, maybe you're a new system admin person and you're coming in to a facility and the cables weren't labeled before? Is there things that you can do to start labeling the cables to avoid situations
Absolutely.
like that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so yeah, like I just used the term tone and trace. That's
Mhm.
that's going to be essential if you inherit some kind of system or network that's not labeled. I would suggest starting at the head end at your MDF, toning and tracing each cable from that location to whichever device it is. And start your labeling there. Start with some kind of key, some kind of Excel sheet like we talked about, give some kind of tag to each location. I mean, it's a time consuming process. Toning and tracing is, depending on the size of the facility and how much walking there is between, cable segments and devices, it's a very time consuming process, and it might, involve a lot of, just walking and sorting all that out. But it's invaluable in the end, especially if you're have issues with your devices and they need to be replaced or troubleshot or whatever it may be.
If the
Another
system
option.
is functioning, yeah, sorry,
No,
James,
go ahead.
you and I just keep talking. I was gonna say,
I
if the
know.
system is functioning, I mean, we have sometimes you unplug it, you look and see which camera goes down, you make a note, you plug it back in, and you do that times all of your cameras. But to Cal's point, even in that situation where, maybe you don't have to walk around the entire facility, you're still talking about, 30 seconds a camera to like unplug it, let it go down, plug it back in, keep track of it as you go. It's not super fun.
Well, and if we're not talking about cameras specifically, if we're talking
There's
about
no way to do that.
yeah,
Yeah.
so you got an office building full of people. You're going to take their internet connection down at their desk for that amount of time that it takes to verify which cable is connecting it. some pretty big
It sounds
stop
miserable.
time there.
Can you talk about what tone and trace actually means? Like what is that?
Yeah, so toning, right? Basically, what you would do at the head end. So a toner has two pieces, right? So you connect the head end of your device cable to one end of the toner, it sends out a frequency across the cable that you can then use the toner end of the toner to actually, you know, identify that frequency. So it emits a sound. It's like a very distinct sound. And if you know what I'm talking about here, like that sound will never leave your mind. But like that, it's like almost TV static and a large like kind of hum.
Yeah.
But
You
you
got to
really have to
recreate the sound for me,
physically.
Cal. Come
I'm
on.
definitely not
Yeah, we
doing
need to
that.
hear it.
Definitely not doing that. But
So
I'm sure
you're
Dan can
basically
insert
plugging
something.
that device into one side, and you would literally be walking from camera to camera, pulling the camera down, putting the matching device in the other, and being like, "Yep, that's it," or "Nope, that isn't," and
It
doing
doesn't
that
even.
again and again and again.
It doesn't have to
That's
be at the
miserable.
end though. Like you can do it on the cable, like the actual cable itself, right? So you
Okay.
tone the actual
Okay.
line. So it doesn't, you know, necessarily have to
Okay.
be at the end of each device, but
And you may
you
not
have
have to pull the camera down then.
right, right.
Okay.
But you still have
That
to trace
helps.
which cable is going to which
Yeah.
location.
Yeah, the other thing that technique wise that definitely can help there would be the you know, having like a managed switches and stuff like that. I know that's, you know, sometimes like the number one reason why people would get them is just to know like, oh yeah, port 29 is, you know, this device or something like that. And that most of the time managed switches will tell you which port is which IP address is connected to which port, but you know, you have to, it's another layer of networking that some people don't do, especially not necessarily for camera systems. They're typically unmanaged switches that don't have that capability. So I think even for cameras, especially if you've got that wider multiple PoE switch kind of setup, you definitely need to label them physically too.
Wow. So we talked about what labeling is and some things that you could do if maybe you haven't labeled them before to get there, but how do you actually label the cable though?
Varies.
With a Sharpie.
Yeah, I mean,
So
Crayon.
wait, do you just like
that's definitely not
nail
crayon.
polish?
Cal's
I'm
like,
not sure that would
yes, a
show up too
crayon.
well. But yeah, no. So initially, right, when you're doing the install, say it's a new construction project, yeah, Sharpie's fine. You just, you know, you assign either, you know, a number, you know, based on your site map or your key or whatever, and yeah, you can mark that on the cable itself, just so you know, as the installer can keep everything in order. Once everything is plugged into the patch panel and then patched into the switch, especially in an MDF or IDF, it's very, very important that you use some sort of, you know, cable tag or even a label maker to you know, make printed labels. So you're not relying on, you know, someone's messy handwriting, or, you know, is this a B or a 9, or, you know, what is this? Because that's just going to add time too. So if you can, you know, make the initial investment in the label maker and some cable tags, and do it printed initially, it's really, really going to save you time in the long run too.
And a lot of the markers and stuff can also like wipe off over time too. So even Sharpies and stuff, you know, they could start to fade or get smudged or something like that. So I think the label makers definitely are the actual printed labels are the way to go.
Are
For
there
sure.
any tips or tricks, maybe techniques that we would want to convey for those out there maybe in need of labeling cables or interested in getting the cables labeled during their initial install? Like, is there anything that we could teach or convey?
Do it.
Yeah.
The importance of it, for sure.
Yeah.
Just
I mean, I
Labeling
heard
maker.
Cal say a couple of things, like sitting there with a label maker while you're trying to get everything plugged in and set up right off the bat sounds like it could feel, you know, distracting or like this extra thing. So it sounds like a good workaround there is like, go ahead and mark it with a Sharpie real fast, put some painter's tape on it, get everything set up how you want it, then go back through with the label maker. And the label maker doesn't have to be terribly fancy or complex, just a, you know, same label maker I've got in my house.
That could like like if we're, you know, going into something that's more maybe specifically for cameras, and maybe for somebody who's installing a camera system for the first time, even like what would that even look like? I know we talked about keys and stuff like that, but like, you know, what, let's just say we have, would it be as simple as maybe putting a label on the actual camera saying like this is camera 19, And then on the other end of the cable, you're putting at your switch or wherever it gets connected, you're going to put 19 on that cable. So you know exactly that. Oh, and then you have maybe the floor plan or potentially just even a document that says, where cable 19 is and what where camera 19 is and a picture of it or whatever. But does that, as simple as possible, I guess, like that would be that's going to save them a lot of time in the future. Am I right? Or
100%. Sometimes, and I challenge the viewers to start looking up when you see security cameras in businesses, and sometimes you'll see, from a label maker, a sticker on the camera that says something like a number and a location, and you can bet that at the other end of that cable segment, you'll see a corresponding label on the cable tag, and then on the patch panel or switch or wherever it's plugged into. That's just another step you can take to label both ends. But as long as you have the key and you understand where the locations are of the devices, then really the head end or the networking equipment end of your cable segment is the most important to label. But if you want to take that extra step and do the devices as well, it can only help you save time in the long run.
Yeah, just to kind of make the point that if you I'm sure they'll see pictures if you look up cabling, labeling cables, and you'll see kind of the keys and everything like that. It might, for somebody who's doing it themselves, that might seem kind of complicated. I just want to mention, like, it can be as simple as like even putting a label on the actual like cable to say like this is outdoor 1 or front entrance 1 or whatever can help a ton there too. Just whatever you can do to help understand, with the understanding that like this is something that you might have to deal with years ahead of time, then can definitely pay off in the future.
I mean, you could even go as far as like putting something crazy like a unicorn sticker on your camera and a unicorn sticker on the corresponding end of the cable. I mean,
That sounds fun.
as long as either end what it corresponds
Sticker
to.
packets. Let's go.
Anything.
Sticker SCW logoed sticker packets for camera labeling.
Oh my God, that's the next thing right there.
That needs to be an April Fool's product or something for sure. There's something to that.
We could actually do some default
emojis.
ones, like, yeah, it's all different Slack emojis.
Yeah, just send it. Like,
this one's the puking face. This one's the sideways smiley face.
Exactly.
I love it.
The praying hands. Yeah, all that stuff.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. It's like it's multilingual. It crosses all cultural backgrounds. We could sell them internationally. This is great.
Yep. Yeah. So Klein Tools, they make a really, really popular. It's in a book format, right? So it's like little stickers with letters and numbers, so you can basically tag your cables based on whatever scheme you choose. So in the future, look for an SCW one without letters and numbers and just Slack emojis, so you can label your cables properly.
Definitely. No, I think that's really helpful information around labeling cables, though, how important it is, it really being a mission critical type of task more than, something that you should do, right? It's just, it needs to be done. It'll help with troubleshooting. It'll help in the long term of just total cost of ownership of the system, right? Less time troubleshooting, less time spending money on service calls, all of that jazz. So any final thoughts from the experts on labeling cables?
Do it 100% of the time.
Do it. Right. It's never too late to start, right? Getting a new camera put up right now, if you're getting a POS system added to your network, if you're getting a new printer, no better time to start labeling than now. So thanks so much for our experts for tuning into this one and helping us out about labeling cables. Thank you all for tuning in. If you've made it to this point in the video, truly appreciate it. Leave some comments below on things that you'd like to.
Prayer emoji.
That's right. Prayer emoji. Comment down in the comments below if there's anything that you'd like us to focus on in terms of installation services specifically. But appreciate it, experts. Make sure to tune in next week to our In the Trenches episode, and we'll see you next time.
See you.